Hello, this is Mona Tonchev, past president of NCSM, and welcome to the NCSM podcast, Learning with Leaders, the Reset, Renew, Restore series. Join me and my co-host, John Sangiovanni, as we sit down and have conversations with emerging and established leaders about how we can reset for the upcoming school year. Listen as we talk to mathematics leaders who can help us think about resetting what has become status quo these past few years. We will learn about their inspiration, perceptions, insights, and perspective. Listeners, fellow mathematics leaders, if you feel like current math instructional practices or student learning seems stuck or stalled, it's time to hit reset. Hello, listeners. I am Mona Tonchev, and welcome to the NCSM podcast, Learning with Leaders. We have a special addition to the Reset, Renew, Restore series this month. We are releasing 5 bite-sized podcasts highlighting the newest NCSM publication, Culturally Relevant Leadership in Mathematics Education.
Yeah, that's right, Mona. This is a bite-sized series, and today is the 4th course, which I think is the entree, I guess. It's the 4th course of the series, and it's an appetizer, really, for this upcoming landmark NCSM publication. Our conversation today is a taste of some great work featured in that work, and also a taste of what's to come at the NCSM Annual in Anaheim. And oh, by the way, if you haven't, now is the time to register. It's also a great time to register a colleague and maybe another colleague if you need to. So welcome.
Yeah, we are really hoping to see everybody in Anaheim. And yes, John likes food. But today we are talking with Jenny Novak, who worked with John, Ostrid Fossum, Gina Rivera, and me to craft the chapter on today's focus, the monitor action, which is the 3rd guiding principle, and of course, part of NCSM's newest book, Culturally Relevant Leadership in Mathematics Education.
Right. So welcome, Jenny. We're going to just jump straight in.
Sounds great.
Again, yes, we're going to skip all the other courses. We're going straight in. As Mona just said, today we're talking about monitoring. So not just monitoring, but why it matters and really how leaders can realize it. So to get us started, what does it mean to monitor for culturally relevant teaching, learning, and leading in mathematics?
So thanks for having me. I think monitor is an incredibly important chapter in this book and in the leadership series. It's usually the most overlooked, right? Like no one wants to talk about monitor. It's not as fun and exciting. Like design is super exciting to do, empower is exciting and advocate. But monitor is really the important work, right? That comes along with this as well. And so as you think about monitoring for culturally relevant leadership, there's a few actions that are really lifted up in this book. First, it's engaging your teachers or your team in a cycle of continuous improvement. So thinking through the entire development process, implementation, and then monitoring the work and the impact on student learning. The second action is really thinking about what evidence you're collecting along the way for that implementation so that you can have those checkpoints to see if you're on course and then what revisions need to happen. And then finally, the last action is focusing on analyzing impact. So thinking about how the tasks and how the instruction is impacting student identity, agency, and efficacy.
Yeah, Jenny, I love how you describe that action. And you're exactly right. For leaders, this isn't always like the fun action per se, but it's such a critically important one because this work is never done, right? We're constantly thinking about where are we? It's a cycle, and we're constantly thinking about how can we do more, how can we do better, and this action is so important for those reasons.
Yeah, I would also add, and I don't remember where I read it, but it's something about professional learning. As math leaders, regardless of your title, you probably do a lot of professional development or, share new information with the teachers or teams that you serve. Well, if you just share the information and you don't go back and revisit and follow up, it was probably a great day of learning. However, go back to what Jenny said, do we know if it had an impact on student learning? And so the monitor piece is incredibly important because it all goes back to does the work we do matter for every single student, right?
Yeah, and to that point, Mona, is the work, are we realizing it in action in classrooms? And when we're falling short, what actions do we need to take to move forward. That's a really nice add there.
So I have a question. So when you think about the leadership actions that you guys just discussed in the monitor guiding principle, how are those connected to the framework for leadership in mathematics education, or maybe even extension of the framework that came out in 2020 from NCSM?
So they're a nice extension. When you think about the framework as a whole, monitor is already one of the key elements. Now it's taking that and what is the lens that we're putting as we're engaging with this work with culturally relevant leadership. So you have the framework, which gives you the overarching ideas, and now it just helps you to focus a little bit more and to be a little more intentional in terms of what evidence you're collecting, how you're going to monitor along the way, and then how you're going to make sure that those supports and structures are in place.
So how do you,
So
oh, go ahead.
yeah, go. No,
I
please.
was going to say, so how do you see this monitoring playing out over the course of the school year?
So if you think about a cycle of continuous improvement, and there's a couple of models out there, the one that we used in the book really focused on planning and design phase, implementation phase, and monitoring phase. So if you think about what you want to accomplish over the course of a year, each of those phases need to be represented, and we have some reflection questions that go along with that as well for leaders as they're thinking through how am I going to engage the teachers I work with, or my team, or my larger district, whatever your audience is that you're working with. How are you going to engage them of the work of the opening reflection part and design process? How are you going to support them as they are implementing these strategies in the classroom and engaging with students? What evidence are you collecting along the way? How are you going to have those checkpoints and ongoing reflection opportunities with the teams of teachers? And then how are you going to use that evidence to really see if there's an impact with the student learning as well?
Yeah, Jenny, you brought up those reflection questions, and I think that those are so important because as leaders, sometimes we don't always know what questions to ask ourselves, right? Or what questions we want our colleagues to ask themselves. And so I think those are a really nice resource, well, for taking action to monitor culturally relevant teaching and learning of mathematics. It gets me to another question. And before I get to that question, I'm thinking about like where do I collect this evidence and how do I monitor these things? I'm thinking about being in planning sessions with colleagues and being in classrooms and looking at tasks. But what types of actions do you think about, or what actions would you suggest that leaders take to monitor culturally relevant mathematics teaching, learning, and leading? Or where might they get started?
Well, I think you should start with the team that you're working with. So I don't think that when you're doing monitoring, it should be aside from them. They should be very much part of that process so that there is buy-in and common understanding of what the goal is and what we're trying to accomplish. And so you want to make sure that whichever tools you determine is co-developed with that team so that they understand, okay, this is what we're looking for, this is why we're looking for it, and here's what we're going to use as an objective tool. And peers can go into each other's rooms as well as part of that collection process.
You mentioned tools, right? You mentioned tools in there. So what tools might leaders use when they're monitoring culturally relevant practices?
So we provided a number of samples in the book. So this would be a great time to do that pre-order if you haven't done so, because I think that this chapter more than any really has some hands-on tools that are easily accessible or adaptable based on your particular school or workplace and what you're trying to accomplish. But we do have some starters that are available for each of the different stages of that cycle of continuous improvement.
Yeah, so as Jenny just said, those tools are a really important part of not just this chapter, right? But the book is littered with resources and tools to help the leader take action. Mona, what were you going to add to that?
No, I was just going to say the resources alone. I think for me, and we've said it a couple times so far, it's all about intentionality. This idea that, and it truly connects to the framework book with the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, that if this is something we're starting with, you sit down and you start, what's your plan? What's that plan? go through the chapter and say, what do I really want to tackle in year 1? What do I really want to tackle in year 2? Because every school and every team, even within a school or a district, is in a different point on their journey in terms of equitable math instruction. And so we just need to be cognizant of where those we serve are at, and then move them forward with intentions, with purposeful actions. And that's what this book will support you on your journey. So thank you, Jenny, for sharing a little bit with us. Did you want to add more to that, John?
No, I think you did a really great job. And I know you're going to wrap up here, so I will stop sharing great ideas.
Read the book.
Let's get back
Read
to that
the
food
book.
conversation. Read the book.
Read the book.
With dessert. Go ahead, Mona. Take us.
Yeah. So just so you know, the book is available for pre-order, except for I believe that ends the day that this podcast comes out. So if you hear this after September 1st, you, if you're attending the conference, you will be the first person to purchase the new book at the conference rate. After the conference, it'll go back to its normal price, which is currently on our website. You can find all the information about the book and look at all the list of reproducibles that are in the book.
Yeah. And speaking of the conference, don't forget there's still time to register for the conference. It is right around the corner in just a few weeks. The NCSM annual. We're all back in person again. See math friends, make new ones, and take home a copy of the book, right?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks again, Jenny.
Thanks, everybody.
We hope you have been inspired by this bold mathematics leadership conversation and will tune into our podcast series each month. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and a review. You can learn more about NCSM, Leadership in Mathematics Education, and our upcoming professional learning events on the NCSM website at mathedleadership.org. You can also follow NCSM on Twitter at mathedleaders using the hashtag NCSMBold. Thanks again.